Hey, just doing another check-in. Wanted to follow up on the last video. I did get some people reaching out with some concern, so I just wanted to address that first and foremost. I'm doing really well. I'm enjoying each and every day. I wake up with such gratitude for another chance to be here, another chance to get to enjoy this beautiful world, and yeah, I get to hang out in places like this all the time. I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm very grateful. So I'm good. I appreciate the concern. If you are concerned, feel free to give me a call. I'll talk with you about it too. Um, but that concern, I think, largely comes from people not really wanting to acknowledge what I've sort of started to talk about, which is the fact that our world has and is has been and still is to some extent manipulated by people from behind the scenes, conspiracies, people who conspire to do things without our knowledge and without our consent. And I think everyone really kind of knows to some extent or another how deep this goes, but rarely do you find someone who puts it all together. Or at least when you do, they're labeled as the conspiracy theorists or the crazy ones, which is absolutely just that's a very successful method that those in power have employed to keep people from really questioning reality. This happened so the term conspiracy theorist was coined right after JFK was executed, and it was like anyone who questioned that narrative that it was this one lone gunman that somehow killed him and had several bullets coming from all sorts of different directions, and somehow he was the only one that killed JFK. And so anyone who had any doubts about that was labeled a conspiracy theorist by the media, through the CIA. They were the ones who coined the term, which, as you can see, that's been very successful at keeping people from searching for the truth, ridiculing anyone who does try and look into the truth, because you'll notice anytime someone starts bringing up something that's contrary to what the general consensus is, the media is very quick to label them crazy, a conspiracy theorist, and then we've been so trained to do this that we do it in our everyday conversations. Like anytime anyone starts talking about anything that's outside the norm, it's just automatically labeled as crazy conspiracy theory. So it works really well. But this is just one example of ways that those in power keep the truth from revealing itself, because as soon as we realize, like, yeah, there is a group that has nefarious purposes, that does a lot of things behind the scenes, then the jig is out, and they can't do that anymore. So they'll continue to employ different strategies, but it's also, it's really difficult for people to wrap their heads around. Like I said in the last video, it's acknowledging that we've been lied to for our whole lives, which is hard to wrap around. Like, that's difficult to fathom. It shows the true strength of cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is when you've got one idea and you're presented with a new idea that completely contradicts the existing idea. And when you have this inner conflict, most have pretty much everyone has at least some of a reaction of rejecting that new idea because it conflicts with the old idea, and people would rather stick with the old one because it's more comforting. It's one that's that we're used to or whatever. So this is another sort of thing that keeps us from looking into the truth, especially when it contradicts our reality. But it doesn't change the fact that our reality is largely based on a lie. No, not everything. Like, it's not everything is completely lie, but there are so many aspects to our world that are just simply untrue and working against us. There there is a wealth of evidence pointing to the fact that our air is polluted, our water is poisoned, our food is poisoned, um, and our media, our education system. It's all been specifically designed to keep people dumbed down, um, just smart enough to and live just long enough to be diligent workers, and then as soon as they reach a certain age, die off quickly, from all sorts of cancers and diseases. And people think this is just like, an accident, that we're just so, I don't know, chaotic of a species that we would inflict such disastrous things upon ourselves. I don't know. I've got a lot more faith in humans in general, but it doesn't even really need uh, belief. You can just look at the simple facts of all of the additives that are added to our food and all of the strange things that are added to our water. And people don't, I ask people about, like, chemtrails. That's a funny topic that people automatically label as conspiracy theorists. But I challenge you, like, look up in the sky every now and again. You see them. Like, I see them. I'd say I have not gone a full week without seeing chemtrails. Which chemtrails are these planes that are spitting out whatever particulates out into the air. And this used to be completely ridiculed by anyone looking into it. But now you've actually got government and scientific disclosure of these different, they call them like weather modification. A lot of them are pitched as like a way to combat global warming by spitting out little particles of aluminum and barium and strontium and a couple other things, um, to reflect the sun's rays and combat global warming. But even if that were the case of why they were doing it, like, were you asked, did they get permission from you to spray all sorts of things into the air that you breathe, or onto the plants that grow that we eat? And I don't know, it's been done very secretively for the longest time, and that's why it was ridiculed. Like, anyone looking into it was ridiculed as conspiracy theorists. um, but it's true. And I, like, seriously, look up into the sky every now and again, and you'll see these long, strange streaks of clouds. And yeah, but that's just one example. There are many. I could go into many, and if anyone's curious, like, I've got, there's a wealth of books and documentaries and websites and speakers and people who talk about a myriad of subjects that are very eye-opening, to say the least. And to me, it's much harder to imagine that all these people would just be making all of this stuff up. Because why? Why would you just make this kind of stuff up? There's not really a reason behind it, but there is a reason. You can quickly find the motive of why somebody would do something like that, and it points back to the fact that you've got a group that thinks they are, that wants to play God and thinks that they're better than everyone else on the planet, and so they can make these decisions and control populations, control how, things are operated and how the media is portrayed. And I don't know. Like, I'll give an example that kind of came to the forefront of everyone, last summer with the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. And for those of you, I'm sure most everyone's heard the name to some extent or another. There have been some documentaries that have come out recently. I haven't watched them to know if they're, uh, how good they are or not. But from what I know, Jeffrey Epstein was this billionaire um, who was arrested and imprisoned, for sex trafficking, for human trafficking and pedophilia. So human trafficking with children. Um, he had a private island in the Caribbean. He had a ranch in New Mexico and a apartment in New York. And in all of these locations, there were secret cameras hidden. And basically, what he would do is he would get up and coming, powerful people, people and with a lot of money or within Hollywood or whatever, and he would get them to come to his parties, and then he would either they would either voluntarily put themselves, or they would drug people and force them into um, compromising situations with minors, and then capture it on camera, and then they would hold that as leverage for blackmail material. Um, and this is, you can find all of this information. It's not hidden, and it gets darker and weirder that at that too, because I mean they found all sorts of like altars and ritualistic tools and very strange things. It gets dark pretty quick. But what was the most I guess illuminating aspect of that was the flight log book of Epstein's private jet, which they nicknamed the Lolita Express, as I'm sure you can understand why. But people who were on his flight log, as in people who had gone to his private island, were a huge, like a host of very powerful people, very well-known names, like both Bill and Hillary Clinton, Prince Andrew from the royal family, Bill Gates, a bunch of people from Hollywood, like a ton of people from Hollywood, different politicians. All of them were on this flight log, and so anyway, as you guys know, he was imprisoned, and then mysteriously one day they say he committed suicide. But he was on suicide watch, and everyone with everyone I've talked to understands that there's no way that he committed suicide. Like, he was either killed or broken out of prison by these powerful people that didn't want him talking about what he knew. Um, so that's just kind of an example of these ties to this sort of larger conspiracy group, because it gets a lot darker when you see like their true intentions. And human trafficking is like a huge aspect of how they operate, and this is this is an easily provable statistic, and I'm lowballing it significantly, but there's on average over 400,000 children that go missing every year in this country alone. 400,000, and that's lowballing it. Like, it's difficult to track this information because the FBI doesn't, or they haven't historically tracked it, which is suspicious in and of itself. But hundreds of thousands of kids in this country. So you're talking worldwide, it's easily in the millions, as far as kids that go missing every year. It's definitely over a million, but again, it's hard to track fully. But you get that, you kind of understand the scope of how big this is. And can you imagine? I mean, just it it's horrible to think about, but can you imagine what it would take to orchestrate a maneuver of that scale? You know, that many living human beings, and that was just children. You know, like you talk about human trafficking as a whole, moving this kind of amount of bodies around. You would need, in order to keep that secret, you would need complicit activity from law enforcement, from the media, from politicians, from leaders. You could not pull this off without having that full cooperation from all of these groups. Like, it would just be impossible. And so that's where it starts. When you start digging into it, like, you start to realize that all of these people in this like messed up club. Like they all participate in these kind of behaviors, and like I said with Epstein's, with how he collected blackmail. I mean, that's one of the ways that they keep people from coming out about it, is they threaten you and hold leverage against you. Like you can't speak out about it. Um, Along with like actual threats of violence towards you and your family. I mean, it's essentially the mob. Uh, but I don't know. That's the sort of thing that inspires me to continue looking into it, because these kind of injustices are continuing to happen, and they have happened, and um, people have not been held accountable. And so when you realize that this same group who's behind the scenes stealing our children and doing God knows what to them are also involved with other conspiracies of, like I mentioned, dumbing down the population, and this whole, this whole illness thing too. Like, it's not based in reality. It's just to further their agendas, further their control over people. And they use fear quite a lot to push what they need to. Um, when you have full control over the media, you can push whatever you want, and as long as people keep buying it. And that's kind of the the good news out of it, is it seems like people are starting to realize how these people are in charge and the extent of what they've done. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't even know where I'm really going, but it's just to say that, like, I guess if you're, for people who have reached out to me and want to talk about this, like I love talking about this, because it's, to me, it's the most important issue we face right now, right? It, hands down, nothing is more important than getting to the bottom of this mess. But if you're gonna talk about it, or if you want to look into it, like, you can't sit there and tell me that this is all untrue if you're not willing to really, like, engage the subject and look into it yourself. So that's where I'd really challenge, like, people to start questioning a bit more. Because I'm not, I know I'm not right about everything. I know I don't know everything. Anyone who tells you they know something is either a fool or a liar. And I'm always gonna have that question mark. Like, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna stop searching for it. Um, but yeah, I remain optimistic, like I said, because this world has, that sort of darkness has existed for a very, very long time, a very, very long time, and it's beginning to come to the forefront a lot more. These sort of crimes are being exposed a lot more. The mainstream media won't really talk about it much, but it doesn't change the fact that it's happening, and it's, interesting that they don't report on it. I mean, it makes sense to me because they're complicit, but um, some of the biggest stories, some of the biggest child trafficking rings have been rounded up this year, in the past couple years, and silence on the media about it, which is very telling. But these sort of crimes are being exposed, and along with since it's all tied back to the same group, it means that all of the crimes will eventually be exposed. I hope, at least. And I will continue to do what I can with my voice to shine light on this darkness, um, with no fear. I don't fear them. Um, I don't fear. Like, I don't let fear guide me, and I'd really invite you to try that. Look into your life and see where fear is guiding you, because fear only clouds judgment. It keeps you from going where you want to go. It doesn't. Yeah, it sounds cliche, but really it boils down to the choice between love and fear. You know, which one are you gonna let guide you? I choose love. I will always choose love. Um, so yeah. Anyway, I love you guys. Again, like, appreciate the concern. Feel free to reach out if if you want to talk about it. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep on searching and keep on talking about it. Keep on shedding light on it, so that we can get to that next place where these kind of people aren't in power anymore. It sounds really nice. I don't really want to live in that place anymore. But yeah, love you guys. Take care.